the call to order. Hand to you for the call to order in the agenda.
Order. Secretary will call the roll.
Perfect. With the roll call, as we go through this, Commissioner Slotnick, want to do a quick update? Update. Just like who you are, what you're excited about, just a really brief introduction.
I'm Josh, commissioner, and on this board, a non-voting role, but I really like this board. I love the progress we've made. Excited to be here today.
Kathie.
I'm Kathie Nygaard, and I am the current chair for today.
This
The term is expiring.
Yeah, this is Kathie's last meeting with us since her term is expiring. And so I just thought it was nice to go through and do really brief introductions, kind of just fill in a little bit of this history. Next, I have Susan.
I'm Susan Mace. I love elections.
Todd.
Todd Mowbray, and this is also my last meeting. I've been on this committee for 9 years. It's been a very gratifying experience. I wasn't aware that there were term limits, and I had decided 9 years was enough anyway, since I now have a bunch of grandkids. So I was going to turn it over to fresh blood in any case. So, but it's, the initial purpose of it was sort of for us to advise the election administrator and the commissioners to sort of enhance public input and accountability. But I found that for me, anyway, over the last 9 years, the most gratifying and I think probably most effective part of it has been an ambassador for election integrity, because being on this committee allowed me access to information that most people, A, aren't interested enough to acquire, and B, would find it perhaps a little difficult. You guys are so open and transparent, but people don't think of coming down saying, how do elections work? So for me to be able to talk to people and reassure them with facts and figures and personal knowledge, you can quote studies and you can quote statistics and stuff, but if you have a personal involvement with something, your word carries an awful lot. And I've been proud to be able to represent our election office in a very positive manner and to reassure many, many people over the years that it's really, really working. Relax.
Thanks.
The rest of your life to be nervous. So,
Next, I've got on my list Rebecca.
Not actually sure how many years. Appointed member from a central committee and an alternate and now regular, and I'm just going to continue for now. I got involved because of the election integrity and just to learn how it all works.
Next up, I've got Cameo.
I'm Cameo Flood. I don't know how long I've been on, three or 4 years. Anyway, I enjoy it because it's good to, I feel like I have the inside scoop on how elections work. Especially, I'm curious. Plus I can't keep my mouth shut, so I'm always suggesting.
Keep you involved. Next on the list is Jack. Jack did say Jack Rinck is not available today. And then we've got 2 open positions, one which was recently resigned by Amber and one which is our open student position that we're in the process of interviewing for, which runs me down to our ADA position, which is Travis. Travis, if you have just a sec to chat and introduce yourself, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone, so my camera, I don't have in my vehicle, but Travis Hoffman, I'm the ADA representative on the board. I don't remember when I first came on, but back when Vicky Zier was, I believe, the election administrator, I started getting involved in the group that she had first formulated, and then went away from it for a while, and then came back when this board was more formally created, I think. But yeah, my interest in elections is obviously the accessibility of elections first and foremost, but also just being part of that process and part of the community, and hopefully helping to make or to maximize voter participation by everybody, not just those with disabilities, but the entire community. And that's been my interest in this board. So
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate it. Sorry, I was messing with the sound just a little bit to bring your volume up a little, Travis, but I appreciate that. And we love having you on as the ADA rep. Next, we've got our first alternate, John Newman.
Hi guys, I'm John Newman. I've been an alternate on the committee, I think, for a year. I'm a lawyer in town. Before that, I was a land use planner for Missoula County and the city of Missoula. I served on various boards over the course of time. And in a previous job as a lawyer, I had an opportunity to prosecute election fraud at the federal level, and which there's not a lot of, thankfully. But I just became really sort of acutely interested in this notion that there is fraud in elections when really there is not, and that there, are reasons to distrust elections. I found all that to be sort of a concerning narrative. And so in addition to working to prosecute election fraud, I wanted to join this committee in order to be able to communicate that elections are incredibly trustworthy. And so that's kind of what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least, Marilyn Ryan, second alternate.
Yeah, I'm also an alternate for Todd, and I haven't been in many meetings because Todd is very dedicated. I'm a retired teacher, retired union worker, retired legislator. I'm on heaven, I guess. And I believe in the political system we have at our government. That's why I became a teacher, and that's why I do what I do.
Thanks, Marilyn. And so we also have David Lay, who is our third alternate. David is not going to continue forward with us. So this is kind of his last meeting, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it today. I'm Bradley Seaman. I'm our elections administrator, and I'm joined by Sarah Bell, who is our deputy and the secretary for the EAC. With this, thanks everybody for just doing a little bit to introduce, as we've got so many different people in the room. We're going to go forward, and then we're also going to, at this point in time, ask for members of the public who may be in the room to identify themselves as well.
I'm Scot Anderson. I've expressed interest in serving on the elections committee. I'm retired, previous professional experience managing social service programs, consulting. I have been an elections employee for a few years, and concerned, I guess, about election integrity and voter access, and would like to be more involved.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, I'll pass it back over.
We have a quorum, so we can keep going. And the next first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. You all have a copy. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve it.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Perfect.
Next, we approve the minutes, which you all have seen online. Have you not?
I was here. Take witnesses, so we just have the video.
Yeah, it's just the video recording that's available for everybody. So the minutes are usually spot on because this is the video recording.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Second? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, public comment on items not on the agenda. You're the public.
I received this card in the mail from the Secretary of State, which I assume all registered voters did. And I guess I've got a comment and a question. I'm concerned about the proposal to verify citizenship for voters in Montana. It seems unnecessary to be because of the low incidence of fraud and abuse and so forth. And it seems to me that this may, in fact, raise concerns about election security. And people are saying, well, there must be something going on. Why are they having to verify eligibility for people to vote? So that's a concern. I'm also concerned about certain voters who may not have ready access to whatever documents are going to be required, may not be able to produce the documents, or may be difficult for them to travel to the elections office to verify their eligibility. And I think maybe finally, it seems like the election staff have an increased workload, having to, depending on how this rolls out, to verify people's citizenship and get that recorded someplace in the voter database. So I haven't read the paper today. I don't know what the story was or what the interviews were, but Bradley, maybe you can tell us what specifically is proposed by the Secretary of State's office, and how do you think that will impact operations here in?
Yeah, I'd love to touch base on it just a little bit. I think the big thing is we don't have a lot of information at the county elections level. And so with this, we're still gaining that information from the Secretary of State, but we have been included on their news releases. I got a postcard in the mail, and I've been keeping up with the news articles that come out. And a lot of this is that last year in March, there was a federal executive order on voter registration. And in that executive order, it contained requirements to verify citizenship, as well as an opportunity for states to join into this program. Many portions of that executive order are tied up in courts and are not being implemented. This hits kind of your part of that was producing documentation on citizenship, and that is not going to be required by states at the current time unless the courts have a differing opinion as they're going through this process. But when we look at this, it's hard to know what it is going to look like. So this SAVE program is a database that's used for entitlement programs. So if you needed to get on Medicaid, they may use that to help make sure that you're a citizen and check that citizenship verification to get you into that program. The state has partnered with this program. They've ran our state database through this. And according to the newspaper and their press release today, they found 23 potential matches. This is where I'm going to take off and talk about it from the elections administration standpoint very specifically, because this borders with political, and it's really important that our role here is to administer elections and work on our voter rolls. 23 out of every citizen in the state is not a very large number to be looking into. So that to me is a win. We have great programs involved. Now, I don't know what it means for a potential match. We have not yet gotten information if one of those 23 may be a Missoula County citizen and what that next step may look like. And also, without any information, I'm going to take that as really great news, that our checks and balances in the election process, the laws that require people to be citizens, are working. And as we go through this, we'll find more information about what that looks like. Now, it's an algorithm, it's a database. Computers aren't perfect, people aren't perfect. All of this needs additional review. And as we go through those next steps, we'll be working closely with the Secretary of State and their guidance to see what that means. It is required in the state of Montana that only citizens vote in all elections. In federal elections across the nation, it's required that you're a citizen to vote. Some states have differing rules for local municipal elections, and that it's a little bit different. But as we see this for Montana, this really matches a lot of the hard work we do. We have public lists. We have people looking at those lists, and that's the way our system is established, that our list is public and you can look at it and say, actually, I live at this house. I am the registered voter at that house. That we can build together all of that different information for what it looks like for the public to participate in this process. In Missoula, we've seen elections come down to a dead tie. We know that every vote matters, and we want to make sure that every possible eligible vote gets counted. We want to make sure that all of the votes being counted are eligible votes. So as we go through this process, we're still kind of figuring out what things look like. And I'm going to take 23 people across the state of Montana as the fact that our practices and policies are working really well. And as we go forward, as we gain more information, we'll work towards updating everybody as to what that looks like. We really strive to make sure that voters know and understand exactly what those rules and requirements are. And there's not a ton of information on that postcard. So as we get more, we'll really help share that message so that our voters can feel confident that their vote will be counted. How'd I do for you there, Scott?
I'm satisfied that what you've told us. I'm concerned that there isn't more information available.
Yeah, and there's this big aspect where we can only work off of the information that we have. And then it really delves into very political aspects that as a nonpartisan election office, we want to make sure that we're doing right by our citizens. We're making sure that every vote matters. Eligible voters get to vote and eligible votes count. Now, what that looks like on those next steps, we'll be updating everybody. 23, if 21 of those were in Missoula County, we can send 21 letters really well. We just want to make sure that we have a very clear process and understanding of what those next steps are before we would reach out to anybody.
Heretofore, it's been self-declared that you are a citizen. Is that likely to stay the same, that I say I'm a citizen, I don't have to bring my birth certificate or passport?
That's part of the executive order that's currently going through the legal process. Is they've said, I love this. I look at John and I'm like, he said he's an attorney. But as they're going through this process, that portion of the executive order has been placed on hold. Nobody federally through the executive order is required to bring in a birth certificate showing they're a citizen, any sort of documentation on the citizenship. As part of that executive order, states can share their information to the federal government, and we can opt into programs like this that may help identify people who may be registered incorrectly. So currently, it's at the court's decision, but it is not something that's currently happening in the United States.
Maybe it's perfect to revisit what we found when the SAVE database first came out last spring, and we talked about how we talked with Christy Jacobson about how we were supposed to determine that, and she didn't really have much of an answer at that time. So to me, it just seems like, I don't know, kind of a empty. When I got that postcard, I was a little perplexed also, just based on what we had heard from her last year, that there wasn't really a way that we were requiring for people to say they were citizens.
And so just to make sure that it's clear also for Travis and everybody online, what Susan was saying is, when we talked about this the last time, there wasn't something that was going to be stated as a requirement for people to produce this. And it's really funny because we're walking a fine line in the minutia of law. You're not required to show this. The state can check this information. And I don't know what the county's obligation is if the state sends me a list. I want to make sure our voters are registered voters and citizens. And I want to double, triple check information before we reach out to a voter that says, I'm sorry, I'm not certain you're a citizen and an eligible voter. Those are really those next steps. So no, you're not required to bring in a green card. You're not required to bring in proof of citizenship. But the other portions of that executive order are able to go through. And that's what we saw, is that we haven't had information. At the end of last year, we received the press release, and that's how we found out about it. We worked closely with our staff, and then we got a postcard. So then we turned around and worked with our staff to say, hey, is there more information? Right now, we have an active request out to the state to let us know if they can tell us what counties those 23 voters are in and what next steps will be. And we'll follow up when we get that next portion. Best case scenario, there's nobody in Missoula County that's in that boat. Worst case scenario, we're going to work through as many letters and processes to make sure people are clear, understand their rights, and that it's very clear when we're doing that outreach. So either way, for us who do large scale election outreach, this project on our aspect is not a huge lift. Now, that being said, I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know if they'll run this again. I don't know what exactly they ran, and we're just waiting to get more information.
I don't want to belabor the topic too much, but can you just, so when you say the 23 voters, is that what the state has identified 23 individuals that have voted or are registered to vote in Montana that are not US citizens? Is that what that?
In the newspaper, they use the word potential.
Yep.
Potential non-citizens.
My understanding is this is an algorithm.
Right.
And so they're not perfect. And so when we get that, that's the additional research. We especially for, I can only speak for Missoula County, we will dig in very deep if there are any of those people. And the 23 is from the news. So I don't have any previous information that is not printed in the Missoulian today. And it's a pretty good article covering the state. And I think that the aspect is we'll learn more.
I have a copy for you.
And I may have misunderstood, but my takeaway was that you will now, should you need to start verifying this information, the SAVE database is now available at no charge to our county.
I thought what the newspaper said was the state was going to be used to say.
Yeah.
You read what I did, yeah, okay, see, and so again, I may have misunderstood. That was my takeaway, that if it becomes necessary to use it, it's available at no charge.
I read that. That was my understanding.
I'm going to punt that to the Secretary of State's office.
It does with the initial wave, but then moving forward, depending on what happens at a federal level, if we need to use it, it's available.
And free.
And free. So that, at least the database access won't cost our county anything at this point.
I think it's on the second page.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten anything from the Secretary of State yet. So all I could do is reference the article. And as we know more, we'll kind of figure out where that goes. You know, as we're looking at this right now, I know that it's kickbacks and potential matches, and we're looking for next steps. So, and specifically, not a huge lift on the resources that we're looking at. It was hard because before, when they're asking us for this, we didn't have the number of people. If it kicks back 16,000 in the state of Montana, that changes everything. 23 makes me feel a lot more confident that our system's working as intended. I'm noting that these are potential matches through an algorithm. And you know, how many Bob Smiths with the last four of a social security number of 1, 2, 3, 4 are there? So as we go through this process, we'll kind of narrow that down. And I just want to be really clear that in Missoula, we're going to look at it, we're going to explore it, and we're going to wait to get more info before we get too far down the road.
Right. And yeah.
The Montana election officials.
Right, but my takeaway was that it's more preemptive if it becomes necessary, the tools fit.
I think
I think they're
that's
really big.
Yeah.
And it says the federal government flagged 23 voter records as potential non-citizens. The Fed did not.
well, if there were 500 potentials out of 16,000.
And so I don't know that it's
1,660 million
exactly right that didn't really need to come out of the box yet.
Yeah, and with this, it has been when we get more info, we'll let everybody know. And the hard part is that voters are receiving communication. We don't have that information just yet, but this is not our project. This is not our program. We're being alerted to this the same way every other voter in the state of Montana is. And so I would love to share more information about where it sits, and we will as soon as we're trained on that. We have training that our whole team will be going to at the end of February. And I really hope we get training on this particular item before that. And we'll reach out and let the EAC know as well. I feel like that is, after this discussion, I feel like that's very much worth an email to you all to say, hey, here's what has shaped up over the last month before we get to April.
If there is no clarification by the end of February, if there is no clarification by the time of the primary, don't you think it will affect voter turnout?
Maybe somebody feels like, I don't have a passport, how am I gonna show them that I'm a citizen?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. Sure.
Those are the really hard aspects that come
Right,
outside
and
of the area of
I
election
shouldn't be
administration.
proposing suppositions that aren't going to exist.
Well, we will have new voter ID laws at the polling place for this next cycle. And we will be working hard to make sure voters are familiar with what they need to bring to the poll to be successful. Now you must produce sorry, I love this because make sure I get this right. You must produce a photo ID. You can no longer use a government document issued to you in place of a photo ID. And it is not just any photo ID. You can no longer use your Jelly of the Month club card. You must use that and your voter registration card or bank statement. So we're going to be working really hard with voters to make sure they're aware and prepared for the polls. In Missoula County, we have 85% of our voters that vote by mail where their signature is their version of an ID they show. And at the polling place, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but I would say provisional ballots due to ID, 5. So we'll be working closely with voters to help make sure they have the necessary materials. And if this increases those voters, we'll be working to help make sure that they're aware of how to rectify it.
So is it two form for your voter ID or your voter registration card, like any ID, or if you have a government issued ID?
If you have a government issued ID, and so this will be a state identification or driver's license. If you have a tribal identification, college in the NCAA, there's a group of higher level colleges that cover every college in the state of Montana that will be acceptable. Concealed carry permit. Otherwise, if you have the form of ID that we most commonly saw in Missoula that would have been on the cusp is a student ID, but they've included the student IDs because remember, about this time 2 years ago, we were talking to you about law changes. And similar to that time, these are also under legal review. So I'm currently working on 2 separate versions of training. The nice part is we've already done these 2 versions of training, and it is about which IDs are going to be the case when we're training in March. What we've done is they've made it so that you can't just use any photo ID. You could use your Hellgate Knight student ID. It had your picture, it had your name on it, and that was an acceptable ID previously. Now, it must be one of the listed photo IDs or any photo ID and a government document. The big difference is your voter confirmation card we mail you, that government document does not count individually. You have to have a photo ID with it. So when we're doing outreach, we're going to be saying, bring a photo ID. Any of these photo IDs works. If it's not one of those, bring that and this. And our go-to is always that vehicle registration that may be in your car, because that is a government document issued to you that can supplement whatever photo ID you have. So we'll be doing a lot of updates. And I think it's really important that depending on what the nature is at that point in time, if we're seeing questions, do I need a passport? Yes, a passport will work, but no, it is not a requirement. You do not need a passport or a driver's license. Any of these will work. Here are all of them. And I think that's the best way for us to account for all of these different changes, make sure voters are prepared for election day and successful.
People get their voter registration cards. I have them, but I don't know where I got them.
We mail it to you when you update your registration. Yeah.
Please fill your old ones.
Bradley, I have a question.
Yeah, Travis, thank you. I'm sorry, I just saw your hand up.
You're good. Just while we're on the topic of voter ID, so late last year, Montana rolled out the mobile ID. Has there been any discussions in the state at all about implementing that technology into the voting process?
You know, that is something that I plan to bring up at our training in February. What Travis is referencing is the digital ID in the state of Montana. That's my driver's license. And this will suffice as a driver's license at the airport.
You don't have a physical copy of your driver's
I
license?
have a physical copy of my driver's license, but I tested it and I used this to check in at the airport and it worked just dandy. And it does not
MHK is
specify.
going to start being able to accept it for traffic stops too.
Yep. It does not specify in the law that your state ID cannot be a digital version. That being said, I want to make sure our voters are prepared and nobody gets caught off guard if they're planning on using this. And that's something that the state wants to issue guidance that is not acceptable. So we'll be working on that in February. Thank you for bringing that up, Travis. No, it doesn't have a picture on it, but yes, it is a
Yes, it does.
state driver's license.
If you go into it and then click card information, it has a picture. Your driver's license picture.
Hey, look at that great smile. Thanks, Travis. That would be a photo and that picture. Now, a Grizz card is only issued digitally. We brought this up previously. A Grizz card can be accepted digitally. So we will proceed forward. I'm not going to poke the bear on this one, but we will get great clarification. And Travis, you just taught me something new too. Okay.
Have you any other questions or comments?
I don't, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Appreciated that. Stirred a great conversation.
Okay. Moving on to old business. Is there any? Certainly not. New business. Item 6, you're up.
We're gonna have to fill those so that I don't talk quite as much. Travis, I'm gonna pull some stuff up and share my screen. So bear with me for just a second so I can get this on the digital record too. I just wanted to start with sharing this information here. All right, Travis, can you see this Word document up here for you?
Yep.
Great. Okay, guys. So this is just some quick information that I have for you. And the reality is, Sarah Bill did such an amazing job of setting this up and making sure that it was in a great format for everybody, that I took our Canvas slides and I presented them here to help kind of talk through our municipal elections last fall. And this will cover both the municipal and build into House Bill 719, which is information about rejected ballots. So the numbers, I love the numbers. 91,000 registered voters in the municipal election. The municipal election also included a county levy. So we sent out 78,000 ballots. Out of that, we got back almost 38,000 accepted ballots for a ballot return rate of just shy of 48.5%. That number is always higher than our turnout number because of required laws that keep voters on the rolls for 2 federal general elections before canceling them. So that is huge. 50% turnout in municipal elections is something to be proud of. 48.5% turnout in municipal elections is something to be really proud of. We're grateful to our voters for their hard work. We want to help them be successful. And as we go through this process, I love to start it off with how well those voters did. During the process, we rejected 4 ballots because when we opened those secrecy envelopes, they were empty. And so through that process, we had to reject those and track those through. But we did have two unexplained differences. And what happened is in style 7, which that was the county ballot issue, just had the levy race. We had 2 more ballots that were counted, then marked as accepted in the system. When you have 65 people and what is that? 130 hands touching ballots as they go through this process. That's what I refer to as the human element in elections. We have an error rate in almost every election. We go through every election and we crunch this data and we produce it, and our error rate was 5/1000ths of 1%. And similarly, there are recount thresholds. And so if you're under 1/4%, if the election is decided by less than 0.25%, we're doing a recount. So that sort of error rate is far below a recount threshold that would require a review of those physical ballots. But as we've all seen as we've gone through this, and I heard each of you say it, election integrity is a high point. And I want to talk that no, we're off. We're off too. And we track this and we report this every single time before our election results ever become final. Now, the spread on that county race was something like 4,000 votes. So those 2 had no bearing on the election. And when we present that information to our Canvas board, it's not their job to make sure we were perfect. It's their job to see any discrepancies, review those discrepancies, and make sure those discrepancies can't impact an election. And we successfully canvassed that election 2 weeks afterwards, issued certificates, and really had a relatively successful election with a few fun tweaks. Before I jump off from the numbers, questions about that? Let's talk about House Bill 719 and rejected ballots, because this was the big change. And this one really caught us pretty hard coming into the 2024 general election. As we went through this process, we included a new envelope designed by the Secretary of State's office. We did outreach with press releases and news releases. We held it on social media. And on the first day of ballot return, something seemed off. We had more rejected ballots on the very first day of our ballots coming in than we had for the entirety of the primary election. Now, Missoula County had 2 changes. Every county had at least one change to add the year of birth. Missoula County changed the layout of the envelope and we added the additional year of birth. So we worked hard to help voters be successful with this. And as you can see in these numbers in here, we had more rejected ballots than we've had ever in the past election. We rejected 1,090 total ballots. Now we're able to work with voters and we resolved over half of those. 60% of those ballots got resolved because every voter is going to be notified if their ballot is rejected. They're going to get a letter in the mail. They're going to get a phone call from our office, an email if they have an email address on file, and then they get a second contact from our office. So this was a huge lift for our office, and hats off to our team. I got to hand it to Jill Bezdacek. She's our lead election specialist. She said, we want to bolster our rejection table, the people who do this work of reaching out and contacting. And that was clearly, yes, we doubled down. We reached out to the Secretary of State and said, hey, our rejection rates are very high. Would you be interested in joining us in a news release? We didn't hear back from them. And we did proceed forward because we needed to let voters know these changes and we needed to highlight it so that they were really successful with this. We instantly went to multiple layers of news releases, interviews, working with third-party groups, updating our printed materials in our office, and staffed a person to ask everybody who dropped off a ballot, did you put your year of birth on there? And we were able to track and see our rates drop. We stayed pretty standard in kind of the middle of the pack in our large counties throughout the entirety of the election. But this was a change. This was a big change. And we went into this process with a repeat of a dead tie that we had had 2 years prior. And so we know every single vote matters. We worked hard to make sure that voters knew that these requirements were there, because each of these year of birth issues would have been areas where otherwise valid ballots could have been accepted. So we wanted to make sure that we were working hard with voters to help them be successful. And what we saw is that across the state, around 3% rejection rate compared to 0.5% in previous elections. So there was a substantial jump, and there was a substantial amount of outreach. We are currently operating, there is a lawsuit on this as well. We're currently operating the same way we always do. We're going to train our voters on the laws that currently stands, and we will let you know if it changes. As we gear up for our upcoming school and special district election, we're going to work hard to help make sure that voters are knowledgeable about this and successful with voting. And at this point in time, they've gotten one opportunity to see this. Now, these aren't huge numbers, but when every vote matters and races come to a dead tie, all of these things, citizenship ID, year of birth on the affirmation envelope, all of them come to an impact. So we take it really important that voters know and are knowledgeable with the best ways to be successful. We're excited to see that number go down in the initial number that are rejected by our office, because that means we're doing what voters need to be successful. Where I'm very concerned about this are the voters who don't vote municipal elections, don't vote school or primary elections, but vote in November. And I want those very infrequent voters who haven't experienced this 4 times to be successful as well. And we have a year to help with this outreach. As we're going forward, across the state of Montana, counties were asked to provide information out on this, and we're tracking closely what is happening with each of the different lawsuits. Same day voter registration, year of birth on your affirmation envelope, ID information. Those are the big 3. As you've heard me say multiple times, our goal is just to help people be successful as we go through this process. I take a lot of pride in our team's hard work at 56% resolved out of the number that came through. And if we can lower the number that come through and resolve even more, even better. So I just wanted to provide an update because there was a lot of information going around about this. And anytime the election law changes, there's a learning curve. And our biggest goal here is to help voters get over that learning curve as fast as possible. And I'm really proud of the outreach that we did to work and help make sure people were successful. I hope all 618 of these people knock it out of the park in the next election.
So did you get any feedback on the people that didn't resolve theirs about why they didn't get any?
No. As we're closing that out, I know I have a list of those who haven't resolved. But we did not do any outreach to them specifically to ask what's happening. One of the big things is our rejection rate went drastically down on election day. And I think the big reason for that was it was really hard to not have your year of birth on the envelope when you're handing it to a person and they're saying, is your year of birth on this envelope? So I feel like I think it was 1% on election day that was our rejection rate, which we've been as high as 6%, as low as I think 1% was about our lowest. We may have hit less than 1% on a very low mail day. But it is that aspect, working with those voters, making that direct request. I bet that 1% was everything via the mail. Now, as we work with those voters, we don't have a ton of time to resolve a ballot. Up to 5 p.m. the day following the election to resolve a ballot and provide ID. And so part of this process that we didn't have forewarning of it, but the Secretary of State started calling voters with rejected ballots. And that actually helped bolster our numbers. So it's not just our team working on this, but also the Secretary of State was reaching out. So this really became an all hands on deck situation. And I love seeing that as we gear up towards a federal general election cycle to say, how can we participate in this together? We all want valid votes to count.
I was also wondering if you have any insight into why the signature rejections are so much higher.
I don't, but I'm assuming it's that duplicate area where we changed both our flap and changed the year of birth requirements. So remember, in Missoula County, we used to have the flap. And with that flap, we were able to add a substantial amount of additional instructions. In preparation for this, to help everybody be successful, we used the Secretary of State's designed envelope. And every county except one in the state chose to use the Secretary of State's designed envelope. Safety in numbers, making sure that it's easy to let people know how to be successful. In Missoula County, it would say, did you remember to sign? Sign here. And I think that contributes a little bit. And that
Do
is,
you think these were unsigned or not bad signatures?
There are a lot of them not signed.
Okay.
I was like, that is both issues for us with this number. But we had a lot more not signed at all than we've had in the past. And I just think that's that learning curve.
So I received feedback that people didn't like that their signature and their birth year were visible.
Mhm.
It made people uncomfortable. Is the plan to stick with that or go back to the flap?
So this is that safety in numbers aspect. As we're going forward with this, we want to make sure that as we proceed forward, we're working with what's prescribed through the Secretary of State. Producing the envelopes with the flap have multiple aspects that are a hindrance to our operation here. I have a whole team that's job it is to tear off flaps to expose that we're paying, and we're slowing down the time that we're getting ballots processed. On election night in the 2024 election, we ended count Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. We're not allowed to pause the process. We asked for relief from the Secretary of State's office, and they said, nope. And so part of this is we need to come up with ways to increase our efficiency to help manage that. The other aspect is we're preparing towards future innovations in election. And one of the things that I am really working hard on with mail ballot envelopes is that we have the ability for computers to do repetitive tasks. And this is what's known as a first pass, second pass scanner. It allows the computer database that has your signature to review the signature on your envelope and then pass that over to humans for review. So we're working closely with the state to help make sure that we can build towards that future, because with 85% of voters voting by mail and with a strong push to not having continuous count all the time, not pausing the process and needing that accuracy, we're working hard to find that balance. I too have heard that feedback from people that they really appreciated that additional layer of secrecy. And I feel like the best method to go forward with that may be not changing the envelope as much as the requirements on the envelope. And I don't have a ton of say in that. We'll have to wait till that next legislative session.
So in order to scan the signature for first screening, the signature has to be visible.
Yep.
So you couldn't cover it with the flap you used to have.
Yep. And so part of this is our plan and change that was well in place before the legislature comes up with a requirement to add the date or year of birth to the envelope. And then it gets compounded by the additional information. And the information on that envelope is currently tied up in this lawsuit. So we're waiting to see, and there's a potential that we're able to use that same envelope and we don't have a year of birth on there. There's also a potential to proceed forward and explore envelopes that have a flap that is removable, that allows you to scan. And then it becomes, how much do those envelopes cost? And can we get the whole state to use those envelopes for some uniformity? And that way we can really balance that. But if the concern is specifically around both having the year of birth and the signature, we want to wait and see where things go in the current district court case. Now, we haven't ordered envelopes because we've learned we have not ordered envelopes for the next upcoming elections. It's going to take us about 4 weeks roughly to get all the envelopes we need for an election. So we're preparing, we're getting ready, we're searching for vendors, and we're waiting to see what happens. Did I get your question pretty good, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Basically, it's no. They're looking no flap.
wanted to point out the resolution rate at 56% is much higher than in the previous election, 44%. You did a better job of sorting that out. Also, it occurs to me that by the time you're following up with people whose ballots have been rejected, the results of the election have been announced. Haven't they?
Sometimes, if you mailed it in on that first day and you're rejected and you haven't resolved yet, then no, you may have weeks to get in and resolve that information. So it really depends. That's specifically why we saw it drop down, is as we added people who came in person and then the multiple drop-off locations on election day. But should you have mailed that in and we get it a week and a half before, a week before, there's a little bit of extra time. And so on election day, I think you could argue, yes, it's hard when you read that so-and-so has won the election by 6,000 votes. And you're like, thanks. Ahead of the election, it's really hard to know. And our messaging was very specific. We know every vote matters. Help make sure your voice is heard. Here's how you resolve. Okay, jump into the next topic, unless anybody else has anything else. I'm loving this topic. I'm thinking we're having some great discussion. I was like, we've got such a short meeting agenda, and then you get me talking elections. I wanted to talk about our Give a Day for Democracy program. I wanted to chat with you. How many of you are familiar with this program? Great. This is something we implemented and started in 2018 with the guidance and assistance of the Election Advisory Committee. They pretty much ran this process in 2018. And what this process has been is working with the community to help provide outreach about election judge training. And specifically, the Give a Day for Democracy program is about encouraging service groups, businesses, and organizations to share this information. Here's our gold star. Missoula Federal Credit Union works with us and pays their staff their current wage at the credit union to volunteer on election day. They provide their staff paid time off for training. And you could almost call it Give a Dollar for Democracy, because what we're doing, sorry, I'm going to bring this up on the screen for you, Travis. Because what we're doing is working hard to help make sure that voters have the best possible people serving them in a polling place. And what we realized is many of these people are working. So maybe one of the best way to get in touch is to reach out to groups like the city of Missoula and ask if they can provide volunteer opportunities for their team. The bronze star would be, can I put a blurb in your newsletter that just says, hey, if you're interested in signing up, sign up. Getting this information out to share it more widely. When we started this process in 2018, we created a list of 300 different businesses, organizations, departments at the university, divided those out, and went out with these packets and made some introductions, some handshakes, and got them the information, and had members of the EAC reach back out and say, Bradley, I talked to Bob over here. Bob is primed and ready for you. I gave him the flyers, and you should go over there and talk about implementing this program. We have built an incredibly robust election judge recruitment process since I started in 2016. And in 2018, this was a very critical part of the process. And we changed the way we're hitting it for 2026. We have started our election judge outreach. We will make our public election judge outreach tomorrow. And I wanted to talk with you about this before it started out going public. And when we start our outreach, we reach out to those experienced election judges and staff and say, Cameo, you get your email? Yep. And say, hey, training is coming up. You have expressed interest or served before. And we want to reach out to you first because there's a limited number of training positions. And I don't want you to have to fight to get into the class that you are looking for. When do we start? Wednesday? As of this morning, over 200 election judges signed up. This process in 2018 is looked at as cast a wide net and reel in all the fish we can. And in this case, we're going to focus. What I would like from the election advisory committee is if you know a great organization that may be helpful, reach out to me or to Sarah. Let's chat and let's get in touch with them. We've been looking at all of the service organizations. We've been looking at the political organizations. We'll be presenting to central committees this month and next month. We're going to reach out. We're going to talk with our Progressive Democrat team. We're going to talk with our Adjourn club. We're going to talk with everybody we can in these spheres that we've already done introductions. And rather than asking you to help champion this process and then turn them around to us, we're asking you to help champion this process and just help us very specifically, not a very wide net, very focused. I'm trying to think of a really great example of this, and I'm going to cheat and use one that I've already kind of gotten in the hopper. Todd used to serve as our representative from the Democratic Central Committee. We're presenting to the Democratic Central Committee, and we are reaching out to them to make sure that they are aware of the requirements and making sure that they are getting all of their engaged people knowledgeable about the training so that they can help share that information. We're doing the same with the Republicans. If I didn't know Jim Royan so well, I'd say, if any of you happen to know somebody on the Pachyderm who could make an introduction, that would be great. Rather than going through this list and working hard to help separate it out, following up, chasing through, I just want to provide you guys these packets of information. So we have a couple of different things. A handout. I'll print it as a half-page piece of paper that you can give to anybody that takes you right to our sign-up page. We've got a flyer that you could work with an organization on. See how I do with this. Forgive me, I'm trying to do this live here for Travis and for online. This flyer. This is designed so that you could reach out and say, I actually know Onyx hunting maps. And it wouldn't seem like the sort of business that you would be really connected with. But if you reach out to him, Bradley, I bet you get 18 different people to volunteer. And I would say, thanks, Todd, I appreciate that. Who's the best person to reach out to? And you'd say, I don't know, but I bet you'll get 18 people. And I say, I'm on it, Todd. Great, I got you. Or you say, Brandon, here's his cell phone number. And that's the sort of request we're making very specifically to the EAC. I'm not even going through the list and regurgitating the list. If you know of somebody you think that we should be reaching out to, shoot me or Sarah an email. We will get in touch with them. Our training sign up will begin in March. I believe one class is full.
So already started.
Our training sign up has started for experienced people. The classes begin in March. One class is filled up already because we have over 200 people from the experienced people and our outreach we have started doing year round. So anybody who had said, I'm interested in serving, we added them right to the list. We are going to recruit the most election judges out of any county in the state of Montana. And we're 2/5 of the way there. And we're making a press release tomorrow. So I want to maximize everybody's time, and I want you to focus in on the best sort of communication. What is that group that we may have missed? Shoot it to us. I don't care if we duplicate it. We want to make sure we're hitting it. And that's my big ask is, if you know of a group or an organization, will you reach out to let Sarah or I know, and we will find a time to connect and share this information. If you are comfortable in sharing this information, I've got packets prepared, ready to go so that you can bring them with, take them out. And if it's like, hey, Susan, I know you love elections, you should really consider being an election judge. That sort of direct one-on-one is huge as well. We're going to be working hard, but I'm not asking for you, for those of you who are familiar with our Give a Day for Democracy or how it's worked in the past, we're not going to go through the list and be like, I need an ambassador to sign up for these next 8 positions. Because what we found is that, trying to think of a really great group that we reached out to once and received nobody from, was our Quilters Union. It was made as a specific recommendation. Hey, Bradley, this may be a great group. And rather than continuing forward with that same outreach, we've said, just send us a list that's fresh and hot this year, and we'll build a new one. And then, as we're going through, we'll keep them together, because I don't want to put forward effort on anyone's behalf that isn't equating to that we want the juice to be worth the squeeze. I don't want you guys going out doing this recruitment, setting us up for Brandon at Onyx, and then we're like, guess what? He told me to kiss off. So with this, we're really backing this up. We're doing a bang up job on our outreach. We will be doing a lot of news releases starting shortly. And I have a feeling we'll be doing an outreach to everybody on the EAC that says, here's what we know about citizenship verification, and here's where we are on election judge recruitment, just so everybody is aware.
How many elections there are, get 200 tables?
We will need 500. I've trimmed it down. In past, we've recruited 600. And I love this because Todd's like, I'm done give a day for democracy. We need 600 election judges. We've consolidated some polling places. We have more vote by mail voters now than we've had ever in the history of Missoula County. And we are working hard to maximize our efficiency, and it is paying off. So 500 judges. That will give us extra judges to have people available for on-call, split shifts, to make sure that we have additional people for I'm out sick, whatever that may be. Yeah, and we're 2/5 of the way there. You get paid for your training. I love to call this paid public service. You're paid at minimum wage. No, nobody's making $1 million doing this. But on the flyers and handouts here, and I'll pull it down so it's on the screen, you'll also see that you're paid for both your training as well as your service on election day. And as we go through this process, I know that people are doing this for the service, and I know that people appreciate a check shortly after the election, just in time for Christmas. So I like to point out that this is paid public service too. We'll go through and pay people. They do have an opportunity to volunteer, and our volunteers saved the taxpayers of Missoula $4,000 in the last election. Handshakes. That's great. Questions? I don't want to belabor this too much. Here's the big takeaway. We do not have an incredibly robust, please sign up for at least 8 different groups to reach out to, Todd. What I would like from everybody is, please shoot Sarah or I an email if you know of a group, and we will follow back up. We may say, yep, already caught them. We may say, who, what, where? We may say, oh, we've tried that in the past. What do you think is going to be the outcome? And we're happy to work with you all on this, but we don't want to miss a good group. And I think the best way to look at that is not to go through this list and get handcuffed in what we know, but to explore what we may not know. So I have some handouts and materials. You're not required to use them, but I'd love for everybody to grab them. And then tomorrow, it'll probably be Thursday, you'll start to see hopefully some great news media coverage about this, because we're going to start doing our outreach tomorrow via Community Spotlight, KPAX, like the news media releases. Yeah, thank you.
EAC members sign up.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Not only can EAC members sign up for this, it is a requirement of service. Is that EAC members, one of the things that I've heard, because I've been talking to people and asking, being that liaison between the community. And part of that is come and learn. Hats off to Kathie. Every single public tour Kathie was at. And when you turn that around to being a liaison with the community, there's nothing quite like, actually, I've seen this. I encourage you to see it too, and that we're out there and available. So please, as EAC members, thank you, Sarah. I love that we went through this earlier. And she's like, you're going to ask them all to sign up before it goes open wide. Yes, on this QR code, if you scan that with your phone or go to MissoulaElectionJudge.com, you can be a day ahead of the news release too. Even if you're not able to serve on election day, please, part of a requirement of the service on the EAC is coming to that judge training just to know and have learned. And then when we turn around and do this outreach or the feedback and you say, hey, Bradley, this is great, but can you change that? I say, yeah, you bet I can, Cameo. We change a lot of things, don't we? So thank you for reminding me. Yes, you do need to sign up. Please sign up for this. And the sooner you do, the more availability you'll have. All you would need to take is the basic judge class. And unless you plan on being available for service on election day, I encourage you to only take the basic judge class because we want other people to have the availability for some of these additional trainings so that more members of the public are very knowledgeable. And if you're an election worker like Scott, and you're interested in joining the EAC, you're going to be in a really interesting boat. We usually request that you stay in your lane as an election worker and not train because we need other people to train. If you're interested in joining the EAC, please sign up, get in there, beat the rush. Did I catch your next question that you were going to point out? Awesome, I love it. Because I was like, we did prepare for this.
Massey, one little thing.
Please.
Don't be discouraged if you get turned down by a group you thought was a slam dunk. Because I have people say, no, our corporate office says, no, we can't do that. So don't be discouraged. Go to the next one.
Those are a response. You get
Bradley?
those by asking. Travis, sorry, I love this. Your hand is up and I'm doing a bad job of looking at the screen. Go ahead,
No,
sir.
you're good. The materials that for handing out or whatever, can those be sent electronically too?
Absolutely. I just wanted to show them so that something was on the screen here. I actually have them all open so I can tag in each of these different documents as a link and just reply back to Sarah's final agenda so that everybody has it. I'll
Thank you.
also include my EA update in there just to make sure you guys all have a copy. Okay, I will continue to talk about elections until somebody stops me, but I don't know what more I have.
Come on, just set yourself up.
Do you guys got any questions on this? I love it.
Item 7, comments from the committee members.
I have a quick question, because I was in and out of the last meeting really fast. Who was it that was working on the Get Up and Vote video? I have that refugee contact here as someone who give me the information to pass out. So, because we had talked about him reaching out to the refugee community.
He's leaving now.
Oh, who's taking it?
That is such a good question, and I am so glad somebody brought that up. If we have, and I will keep this brief, I see what time it is, everybody. Here's where we're at on this project. We kind of hit a stumbling block, and the stumbling block came exactly where I had thought that it would come in. The stumbling block is in editing these videos and getting them out. And as we've been through this process, I want to own my portion of this. I have been very confident throughout this that when we produce videos, they would not be something that somebody may be off-put by, as in who the person we're interviewing is, so that nobody gets a nasty taste in their mouth if they watch that video. Part of that led to not having elected officials talking about their positions, but having actors talk about that position, which just didn't, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my update that I received didn't land as well.
Yeah.
And then the actual process of editing those videos. In the last discussion, it was briefly brought up. Maybe we could find somebody at like the graphics art department at the university and see if they would volunteer to do this. And I want to be really clear. I appreciate everybody's service on the EAC as members of the community and volunteers. And I don't know if it's our best method to proceed forward and ask volunteers to volunteer their time to manage additional volunteers. So as we went through this process, we hit some stumbling blocks, and I met with David because I was like, hey, where are we at? What's going on? And I was like, what's coming forward? And he said, I love this project, and it was going great. And then it hit the really hard part, and I've got a life and all of this stuff. And I said, noted. Can I take some liberty to get creative? And we've talked and discussed, and if the EAC is interested in continuing this process, I would like to proceed forward and put it into old business. And I'd like to talk and discuss about asking the commission, recommending the same way we did in making these videos, that we work with our internal grants department, find some funding and hire a professional. I reached out to one of the groups that we work with regularly who has an RFP in place and roughed it out based off of the proposal that you all presented to the commission. $4,800.
Can they just do it for because we have like 12 hours.
Maybe. I
The actual
started
side I
over
don't
like,
care about, but there's a lot of good stuff from the other people, I thought.
yes, they can incorporate that footage. I started with, let's just start from the get-go. And so like B-roll, extra B-roll, absolutely. I've worked with them enough to know that they would be able to use that. Now, where that sits is, I'm really trying hard not to guide you all and let you have this room to grow. And I'm so glad you asked that question. And I think the best spot for that to come up is really that we discuss that in old business during the next meeting and come together. And if you guys are interested, I know I would be happy to work with somebody if you are interested in coming forward with a resolution that says, can the commission help us get this from an idea, proof of concept to done that doesn't require us to recruit volunteers and manage volunteers and oversee volunteer work and produces a product that you guys were expecting. So that's a really rough take. And I did not jump out to follow up and be like, hey, will you add this to the agenda, anybody? Because I want to see where this sits from the committee. I love this project and I'm very proud of the hard work everybody has done. And I'm very glad you asked where it sits at, because I think it makes sense to continue this forward in a way that lets you guys think about ways that improve the integrity and access in elections. This will increase our turnout. How much? Marginally, but more than zero. It's not the sort of thing you can measure. Who's watched the video, who hasn't watched the video, there is no control group. But this is exactly the big idea thinking that I love from the EAC. And I don't think you guys need to be the nuts and bolts doers. And I feel like I steered Adrian, David, Jack, Susan, all into this area of being doers.
I thought the last time there was discussion of using, well, EAC or professional, the people who actually work with that organization on a professional level, a staff person, because staff people aren't as visible as the elected person, but know what's going on. And I thought that was sort of the consensus, that we would reach out to some of those people who work for the city or the county or whatever.
And they didn't say yes.
Oh.
I asked teachers, it was at the end of the school year though, and I asked teachers and they pretty much universally said that they would love to show a video in their class. But as far as being filmed right away, I didn't hear answers at all. But I did have a civics teacher come, and then Dan Clark, who does the board trainings, but had been mayor of, I don't remember, small town. But anyway, there was good stuff from both of them. And I certainly didn't feel like you pushed me to be a doer.
Great. I love that, because I'm really cautious in this role.
I love that project too. And it has, like you have said, and it's just given me more information to be able to share with people, just about how much, because that one was focused on municipal elections and just how much more of an impact you have as a voter on those smaller elections, and how much those elected officials and issues really affect your daily life. And really, if you're going to vote, you should vote in the local elections, not the national one. But yeah, I talked to a bajillion people about that, and so it was just another thing that even just doing the project as much as we did, that I learned a lot. And it's given me a lot of information to share with other people. So it would be great if we kept that ball rolling in any way.
I do like the idea of bringing in a film crew to, this is, we want you to talk to these sections of people on putting together, this is our vision. Hey, we get it done instead of relying on people to give up their very precious and scarce free time to do something that is not always in their way.
And the
I would
technical
I would
aspect.
love to work with that professional crew.
Oh,
Right. I agree. I would like to be involved in it. I just can't head something.
and so that's exactly it, as I'm kind of revisiting this process is like, I want to make sure that these ideas that you are coming up with as a committee, we can help get them done. Not that it's like, great, now do it, Rebecca, like, because what I'm really looking for is help us come up with these ideas. Let us dig to these resources. And so I don't know what this looks like. I'm glad you brought this up. If this is something we want to continue, the way I look at this is we've got great info in the hopper. We have time. If we're looking at videos in the exact same fashion as what was presented, and for those of you who may not be aware, it's on municipal elections, mayor, judges, city council, and like a broad overview and shorter videos that talk about like serving in that role so that we can share them publicly to talk about why you should vote in municipals. We got so much together, and I really think that if we put the technical nuts and bolts task to the people who excel at that, that's going to help us get this across the finish line. And on that note, email us, send that information to Sarah and I, or hand that paper down to Sarah, and that will.
I'll verify it.
Mhm.
I could read his handwriting very well.
I kind of felt that vision was a little separate from the videos though.
Well, the part of the conversation I recall having was, why don't we reach out to our immigrant community? Because they have, many of them that I've spoken to have a different perspective on voting than Americans do. We take it for granted. We have this other section of people that it's truly an honor to them to be able to have that voice. So I think that as far as lighting the fire in our local, where people who take it for granted, that might help light their fire. And then also we had the conversation about, instead of talking to the mayor or the former mayor or former council members, why don't we talk to the city clerk or people who are not elected, but work with those people so that they can explain the importance of whomever sits in that chair, this is what they, so that we light the fire and the understanding of why each role is important.
And that
was what I remember. So,
Yeah, we just had experts. We didn't have people,
I'm like,
so.
trying to
yeah,
explore
sorry.
that. That was specifically what I was referencing, is because I reached out to Claire and she was like, I don't know, but I would love that. I was like, oh, fair enough. Thank you. I'm glad I asked you, because that's the other side. Would you like to be in this video? No, thanks. Okay, well, guess what? City clerk is not unique. But I think it's worth revitalizing this whole project. So as we kind of mentioned that, can we add that back into old business when we come forward the next time? And I've got a rough plan. I don't know what that looks like, but I do know that asking the commission to help find grant funding to produce these videos is something that we can definitely do. And that can turn this into a finished product. Separately, is Paul the person I met at the last Pachyderm meeting?
probably.
Hey, guys,
So
more on comments?
being on that.
Yeah.
Originally, when we started that, it was, how to get people interested in all the other boards, the irrigation, the fire, the whatever, and how important it is to the voters, because those guys get to, affect the budget. And I think we really got far away from that, decided to go after, the city council and the county commissioners, and we let go of the little boards everywhere, like us.
I mean, it was David's project that he thought of, and his vision was just to get more people to vote, period. And that was one branch of it. And there was a couple of different ones. We chose to go with judges, city council, and mayor because that was the next election. With the local people.
Yep.
So,
And this is
but
phase
the
two.
vision, the big term vision was like, oh, we'll do it with these boards, we'll do it with the governor, or just, everything. But that was just what we landed on to start. Because it was super, okay.
Yep, because it was the most upcoming one. Now,
We had a delusion about how much we could get done in 4 months.
Yeah, you know what, the average was equal to
Is that
20.
subject done?
Oh, really?
Because I have one comment.
yes, I don't know. Anything more on Judge? I think those videos are great, and I do think, let's please get that on and have a really good discussion about that. Also know April will be right ahead of the election, so I will keep it brief to just very specific items on the election and try and email. I'll shut up and pass over.
I just want to offer kudos to you and Sarah for the exemplary way you not only run the committee, but you and the other deputies run the whole department. It's been a pleasure over the last 9 years. I know, I've been through 3 administrators, and I think the department's running better than it ever has. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a great team.
Get it. Can I,
Yeah.
before everybody else has spoken, I want to tell you all how much I have learned. I thought I knew a lot about elections because I've been a judge for years and years and years. Gray hair shows. But I have learned so much more about elections from this service that I hope many more people take advantage of it and get involved with elections. And thank you very much for your service, all of you, especially you two, and Nathan, Jill, and on and on and on and on. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
the next meeting will be April 14th. I'll see
Yep.
that.
Do you know the other meetings? I can show on it. They're always the, right, is it the first Thursday? It's like a Tuesday from July and October or the next one.
And you get to meet the new kid.
But, sorry.
Oh, no, we should have appointments wrapped up by the next meeting, so we'll move forward with appointment of officers and a new board.
And dive right into an exciting federal election year. I appreciate you all so much.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
And the
Second, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.
That doesn't.
Travis, thank you too.
According to parliamentary procedure.
Bye all.